Welcome back to another Mobile Edit Monday. Today, we are back inside of ON1 Photo Raw 2023. And just to clear it up, all of the photos that you'll see me editing have been taken with a mobile device, mostly with my iPhone 13. However, I'm editing them on various applications. Sometimes that'll be on my phone, my tablet, or in cases like this, on my computer. I'm using ON1 Effects today, 2023. So I am a little limited in what I can do. We're still going to see that ON1 has plenty of tools available to us to really stylize an image. Here's a photo of the New York skyline or cityscape, if you will. I don't know. It's in Upper Manhattan. I took this photo as I was flying in to the airport in New Jersey, snapped it out of the window, and all of this is straight out of the phone. The mist or the fog, that was already there. So let's go ahead and get into the actual edit. The first thing I want to do is bring out a little bit of contrast in the foreground and the city and kind of leave everything else a little fuzzy or hazy. So the way that I'm going to do that is I'm actually going to use some of the AI tools today. Hovering over architecture, you can see that I can add in a little bit of, or it selects the architecture pretty well, or at least the area that I want. I want that man-made ground, I want the flora, and I also want the water. All right. We see that there's a little bit of a hole over there on the left, but we'll take care of that here in a second. Then what I'm going to do is click on dynamic contrast. And this is going to add that mask everywhere. If I hit the letter O, you can see I just got to come over here and clean this up a little bit. So I'll do that, make my brush a little bit larger and just paint over that. Hitting the letter O, I'm now back to having the dynamic contrast over the entire image. If I turn this off and turn it back on, you can see it just brings a little bit of pop to the entire image. And that's really all I want to do. I could go with surreal and really make it pop, but I think natural works well. And in fact, maybe I'll bring up on the large detail, and that just helps with the overall aesthetic of the image. Now, I think in my mind, I want to turn this to a monochrome photo. So what I'm going to do is hit add, and I'm just going to throw on the black and white filter, and I need to start toning this. Now, I want to keep the dynamic contrast on top of everything so it doesn't get buried and modified as I add filters. So I'm just rearranging those over here in my layer stack or a filter stack. Clicking on tone, I'm going to boost the contrast in the image just to help it kind of separate from itself. If we come over to the levels, you can see there's no information over here in the blacks, and I'm barely touching in the whites. So I'm going to go ahead and bring down my black slider. So that way I can really start to get that dynamic contrast or dynamic range, so to speak. Now, I don't want to pull it too far because I do kind of like that fuzzy, hazy look. And this makes it look like it's not shot during the day. So I need to pull up on the brightness just to bring back some of that overall exposure in the image. Maybe modify the highlights just a touch. Pulling them to the right seems to really help with that overall sky. And these are global edits that I'm okay with making to the image right now because I think that it helps pull out a lot. So if I turn off the black and white filter and turn it back on, you can really see how it transforms this and it gives a little bit more focus on the actual cityscape. But I think that we can do a little bit more focusing into the cityscape area here. So I'm going to minimize my black and white filter. And the next thing that I'm going to throw on here is really just going to be a local adjustment. And it's going to be a gradient filter. So I'm going to come over here and I want this to be a linear top. I'm just going to click right about here. I'll modify this as I need to. And I'm just going to pull up and see how I can darken this. So let's open up the adjustments, and I don't need a haze adjustment. I need an exposure adjustment because what I'm really trying to do is bring in the overall focus of the image to the cityscape. So I'm just going to spread that out, make it quite a large adjustment there. So we'll leave that alone, add another adjustment. And this time I'm going to do the same thing, except for I'm going to use linear bottom, and I'll click somewhere around here. That's a little too much or too fast of a transition. So for the sky, I think I'm going to make it a little bit larger, probably pull it off the screen just a touch there, and maybe something like that. It's subtle, but it really does make a difference in just darkening down that sky a little bit and making it not so bright and difficult to kind of focus in on what's going on in here. The next step is to kind of brighten up this area. And the way that I like to do that, you could use all kinds of tools, but the way that I like to do it is grabbing a Vignette radial filter here. And I'm just going to pull up on the exposure. I'm not going to probably use exposure. Got the wrong thing, so let's move that to edges. I'm going to pull this in, and I'm going to pull this out, more of a long oval shape, just to the edges of the city. Pull that down just a little bit more, and maybe even tighten up this little area here. And we'll put that like right there. Now, obviously, that is way too bright, and that's probably not how I would do this anyway. I just wanted to be able to see what areas I was impacting with this. So let's just go ahead and reset that. And let's see if opening the shadows works out. And that does a little bit, maybe a little bit of exposure. And I think we need to bring back some contrast because we're losing that in that area. And the goal here is really just to brighten up this and leaving everything else dark, and maybe even add in some structure because I don't want to lose too much of the information and the detail that's happening in that area. It might stand to remove a little bit of the haze. I don't want to remove a whole lot of it because I kind of like that atmospheric look overall. And I love that this photo is not perfectly sharp, so much so that what I'm going to do next is come over to effects, and I'm going to add a blur over the entire area. I don't want to use a lens blur. I'm just going to use a full blur. Bring down the opacity, probably somewhere around there is appropriate. And you can see it just kind of makes this look a little more abstract, so to speak. Not that I'm going for an abstract look overall. I'm just trying to go for something that is a little bit more stylistic in what I like about the image. Just so we can catch up with where we've gone. We came from this to this, fairly easy, just using some effects. Now, the last thing that I would do just to finish off this particular image is I would hit add, and I would go with a border. I like adding simple borders to my black and whites. So I'm just going to pull down on scale until I get a size that I like, because I don't like thick borders. I think -7, -8, sometimes even 9. So here's what a 9 looks like. That's like that little fine trim. I appreciate that, but I think I'm going to go with a -7 on this particular image. For me, that works out well. It contrasts with the gray over the entire image. One thing that I will show, because you can do this with a black and white filter, and I don't showcase this as often, you could come in here and go to the toner in the black and white filter, and there's a few different types in here. And one of the ones that I really like adding to these types of images would be this cyan type. You can also add in a coffee look if you want something that's a little bit more golden or brown. And these seleniums, I really like the selenium looks. I honestly, if I'm being like completely transparent, I usually just use the toner preset. I don't modify them probably ever. Sometimes I turn on this preserve blacks and whites just so that way I don't overdo the color. I wish that there was a way to have this separated from, like, to be able to turn the toner off and on inside of the preset, or I'm sorry, inside of the filter. So that way I could see what that's doing to the image by itself and kind of fine tune it, maybe even have an opacity slider. I know you can use your own filter, or I'm sorry, a color you could use the split tone and get a very similar result. The problem with split toning is you don't have access to all of those color filters that I was just showing you. So that's the reason. But you have the exact same filter adjustment. So I guess you could just copy all of those settings and build it into here. Nonetheless, here is the before and here is the after image. Hopefully you found some value in this. If you did, smash the like button. If you want to see more and you haven't already, smash that subscribe button. Now, if you want to save some money on ON1 Photo Raw 2024, consider using my coupon code FreeWillPhotos20 when you go over to the ON1 website and check out. Until next time, I want you guys to stay inspired and keep creating. Peace.